Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Boxing Along the Beltway Podcast Network. And the Boxing Along the Beltway Podcast Network can be heard, of course, on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, as well as other podcast networks. Podcast Addict is one of the ones we can be heard on. And also, if you have an Amazon Echo, you can just say, play Boxing Along the Beltway, and it'll come up on your Amazon Echo. So we just want to let you know about that as well. So we're expanding our network here on the Boxing Along the Beltway Podcast Network. Unfortunately, we're doing it at a time where we don't have a lot of boxing to talk about. So we've been doing for the last few weeks some historical bouts and talking about some of our great boxers of the past here in the Beltway. And this week, we're going to do something a little different. Going to let you in a little bit of personal information about myself. And I'm going to go back to the anniversary, which is coming up this weekend, as a matter of fact. The anniversary of the very first boxing card I ever attended. I was not a reporter. I was not into television, wasn't doing boxing spotlight anything. It was way before then. And we'll talk about that today. And there's some historical significance of the bout. The card itself was a good card. The main event of the bout was not. Now, the card was not a good main event. We'll talk more about that. But its significance did a lot for me personally. And we started to see, not because of the card per se, but we started to see the bubblings of what we know today as the Beltway boxing scene just starting to develop here in the area. So we'll talk more about that as well. Boxing Along the Beltway Podcast Network brings you this special report, and it's brought to you by Real-Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas, for shoulder pain and muscle strain, everything in between, Boxing Along the Beltway recommends Real-Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. You go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief, the official pain relief of the 2020 Daytona 500. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods. All at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Well, we're recording this on Thursday, May 14th, and on Saturday, May 16th, it'll be the 43rd anniversary of, again, the very first boxing card that I ever attended. I'm going to take you back to May 16th, 1977. The place was the Capitol Center in Largo, Maryland, and the card was a Don King Promotions card, with the main event being Muhammad Ali defending his WBC and WBA heavyweight championships against a young man from Uruguay who fought out of Spain. His name, Alfredo Evangelista. Now, let me give you some historical significance about this card. First of all, it was not the first time that Muhammad Ali had fought here at the Capitol Center. The Capitol Center, for those who don't know, I'll get more about it. I'll talk about the history of the Capitol Center a little bit. But it was not the first time that Ali had fought there. He fought there back on April 30th, 1976, in a 15-round title fight, defending his title against Jimmy Young. And that bout was a very controversial bout. It was just coming off a loss to Ken Norton back in 73. He was coming off there a little bit, and he fought some more after that. Actually, this is after he ended up beating George Foreman for the World Heavyweight title. We'll talk about the significance of that one in my life in just a moment as well. So, Ali at that time was 230 pounds heavy. He had been for a fight at that time. And a lot of people thought that Jimmy Young may have won that fight. He may have won that fight. He ended up losing a 15-round unanimous decision to Muhammad Ali that night. That was the first bout. Now, on that card, I just looked that card up. There was only one local boxer on that card. Now, his name was a heavyweight by the name of Biff Klein out of Hillcrest Heights, Maryland. He was on that card. He won by knockout on that card. So that was the first time that Muhammad Ali fought at the Capitol Center. Second time was on May 16, 1977. Now, got to realize, and I think I talked about this a while back when Abe Poland passed away. Abe Poland, who owned the Washington Bullets at that time, Washington Wizards, the Washington Capitals, and he owned the Capitol Center. He actually built that Capitol Center, not him personally, but he had that great facility built. And it opened in 1973. I was at the very first Capitol Center event, which was a Washington Bullets game against Seattle Supersonics. And Abe Pollin was a big boxing fan. He was a very big boxing fan. He had a lot of boxing at the Capitol Center at that time, local and otherwise. And this is a big bout for him on May 16, 1977. And Muhammad Ali was the main event against Alfredo Evangelista. Now, how I got to the card. Now, what happened was, now, bear in mind, this bout took place on a Monday night. And I was still in school. I was in middle school at the time. And I remember my dad coming to pick me up from school. And somewhere along the line, I realized we weren't going home. I really did. We weren't going home. We didn't go home. We went past home. And next thing I know, we're on, I think it was Route 202, which is a route here in the Maryland area. And we're headed toward the Capitol Center. I'm like, wait a minute. Why are we at the Capitol Center? And then it dawned on me that was the night that Muhammad Ali was going to fight Alfredo Evangelista. So I was surprised. It was a big surprise for my dad to go to that fight. Now, how I got to be a boxing fan in the first place, my dad got a 16 millimeter film of when Muhammad Ali knocked out George Foreman in October of 1974 in Zaire to win the world championship again. And the rope-a-dope and all that took place. And it was a tremendous film. That one fight, the highlights of that fight, made me a boxing fan for the rest of my life. So I was a huge boxing fan by that time. I was a boxing fan, and I realized this was after the 76 Olympics, when a young man by the name of Sugar Ray Leonard would be one of the gold medal boxers for the United States team, of course, with the Spinks brothers and Leo Randolph and so many others. So that I was really in my boxing mode at that time. So I was a huge boxing fan by the time 1976, 77 came around. And so this was a big deal for me, going to see Muhammad Ali and Alfredo Evangelista. Now, even then, I knew that Ali was not the great boxer he once was. In fact, right before the Jimmy Young fight, Ali fought in probably the worst boxing fight I'd ever seen in my life. When he knocked out Jean-Pierre Coupin, it was one of the most boring boxing matches I have ever seen in my entire life, even to this day. So it really left test my life. So I knew even then that Muhammad Ali was not the boxer that he once was. He was 35 years old. And I fully expected for him to beat Alfredo Evangelista, which he would do. But it was a very, very interesting night. Let's put it that way. Now, there were two co-feature bouts on this card that I remember more than I do the Ali Evangelista fight. Alfredo Escalera, who was the WBC super featherweight champion at the time, he knocked out Carlos Becerril in the 8th round on this card. And I got to see up close a man that I've greatly admired for many years, one of my favorite boxers of all time. Even when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard, I was rooting for Sugar Ray Leonard, but still, I really love this man. One of the greatest lightweights I ever saw. A man by the name of the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. He was on the card. He won a 10-round unanimous decision over Javier Muniz. Now, on this card, looking back on this card, and a lot of the things I want to tell you, kind of looking back on it, because, again, I was 13 years old. So I really didn't remember even then a lot of the things that went on the entire card. But there were no Beltway boxers on this card. Again, we did not have a Beltway boxing community as we do now, even as we did then. I think down the road a little bit, Sugar Ray Leonard was starting it because he had turned pro by then. He had made his pro debut in February of 77 at the Baltimore Civic, what was then known as the Baltimore Civic Center. So it was starting, and Sugar Ray Leonard was going to start what we know now as the Beltway boxing scene here in the area. So really, there were no other Beltway boxers on this card. But it was just being there and seeing one of the greatest boxers, if not the greatest boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali, in person. Now, earlier this week, I had the opportunity, for the first time since I went to the bout, I actually had the opportunity to watch the telecast of this card. And yes, the bout was shown in prime time on ABC. Howard Cosell was the main play-by-play guy, blow-by-blow boxing announcer. Chris Schenkel was also there, and I saw Frank Gifford doing some updates from the studio in New York. But I had not seen this bout up until I saw it earlier this week. And now I know why I didn't. Even then, even watching the bout at that time, I really thought it was a horrible bout. It was a terrible bout. I mean, Ali was dancing throughout. Evangelista would throw some good shots, but it was terrible to watch. I mean, Ali would go back into the rope-a-dope, and Evangelista would throw punches that didn't land many punches. He did land a few. Evangelista did land a few, but I remember people booing during the fight. I remember that growing up, but it was a terrible bout, just a horrible bout between Ali and Evangelista. Howard Cosell, who was, for those who don't know who Howard Cosell was, he was, I think, the best boxing announcer of my time. Now, I mean, I know there was Don Dumphy and some other who were excellent. I've seen some of their films in the day. They were fantastic. For me, in my time, Howard Cosell might have been the best boxing broadcaster I ever saw. He didn't do much anything else. I mean, he did Monday Night Football. He was more famous for that. He did some Monday Night Baseball as well. But for me, he was always the best boxing announcer that I ever saw. And he was the man who told people he tells it like it is. And he told it like it was that night. He even said during the bout, "I'm sorry we televised it." He pulled no punches. He was critical toward Ali. Evangelista at that time was only 22 years old. And so, he had no business probably having a bout of that caliber against Ali, even at Ali's advanced state. Evangelista at that time was 14-1-1 going into the bout. And it was just not a good bout. It was terrible. I wish I could say it was a great bout. And, I enjoyed myself. I mean, I enjoyed being there. Don't get me wrong. Being there, just being able to see Ali. And I think my dad knew at the time that may not have another chance to see this man in person. This may be our only chance. And so that's why we went to the car. And I'm so glad he did. Believe me, it was a beautiful event to go to. Unfortunately, the bout itself was horrible. That's simple. Just horrible. And watching it this week, I know why I don't have too many recollections of that particular bout. I have more recollections of Roberto Duran being on the card and Alfredo Escalera being on that card, because they were two of my favorite boxers at that time anyway. So it was just an ugly bout to speak about. Now, for Ali itself, that was probably the last quote unquote easy bout that Ali would have the rest of his career, because he would face the likes of Ernie Shavers next bout. Now, they were trying to get a rematch with Jimmy Young. That never happened. They tried to get a fourth bout with Ken Norton. That didn't happen. So, but again, it was definitely the twilight of Ali's career. He would have one more major moment in his career after the bout against Alfredo Evangelista. He would win by unanimous decision to Ernie Shavers. Oh, before I get to that, let me talk about a couple of things about the bout real quick. I'll backtrack in just a second. I'm sorry. The bout was interesting also, looking back on it, because it was judged on a 5-point must system, which I had not remembered at all. And I did some research just before we started the podcast today. And the 10-point must system was started by the WBC back in 1968. So why it wasn't used for this bout, I have no idea. I couldn't find any information as to when the 5-point must system was officially finished in boxing, but it was judged on a 5-point must system. One of the judges of this bout, as well as the WBC super featherweight title bout between Alfredo Escalera and Carlos Becerril, was a man by the name of Ray Klingmeyer. Now, Ray Klingmeyer was a longtime referee in this area, in the Beltway boxing area. Used to do a number of his bouts when he was on Boxing Spotlight. And I always used to kind of joke, because when he would stop a bout, it was like he was looking the guy in the eyes who he stopped from boxing, and just waved his arms and just said, "It's best. It's just best. Just stop. Just stop." Now he's probably best known. I don't think he refereed after this too, but he was best known for being the third man in the ring when Vincent Petway knocked out Simon Brown. And a lot of people criticized his work during that bout. And I don't know if Ray Klingmeyer refereed much more after that bout against between Vincent Petway and Simon Brown, which happened to be in the same arena, renamed the U.S. Air Arena at that time. So it's kind of interesting about that. But he was one of the judges for both the Escalera Becerril bout as well as the Ali Evangelista bout. So it was very interesting to hear his name there. Terry Moore, who was also a longtime referee in this area, I didn't see much of him. I think we started early with him, and then he didn't do much refereeing after that. Was one of the judges for Ali Evangelista as well. And also one of the judges for Escalera Becerril was another really quality referee in this area by the name of Larry Barrett. Both of these guys have passed away. I think Terry Moore has as well. But so it's very interesting to see that situation. Now, getting back to Ali's career post this bout. After this bout, of course, he had a tough win against Ernie Shavers, and then he would lose the heavyweight championship to Leon Spinks in Las Vegas, the WBC and WBA championship. He would lose it to Leon Spinks. Leon Spinks would subsequently get stripped of the title because he did not fight the number one contender that time. And then that was in February of 1978, February 15, 1978. Then on September 15, 1978, almost 7 months to the day, Ali would regain the title for the third time and would defeat Leon Spinks by unanimous decision in the Superdome in New Orleans. And after that, Ali announced his retirement, and the WBA title was declared vacant. But Ali would come back. He would lose to Larry Holmes by stoppage, and then his last bout was against Trevor Berbick, and he would lose that bout by unanimous decision. That was the end of Ali's career. So Ali didn't have a really easy fight the rest of the way, and of course his skills were definitely diminishing, and he was starting to get those symptoms, you say, of Parkinson's disease. Alfredo Evangelista had a long career after this bout. I think he fought well into the 80s after this bout was over. He had one other title bout, and that was against Larry Holmes. He would get knocked out in that bout, and he never really reached any kind of that situation again, any kind of major championship run again. So that was a very interesting night. That took place 43 years ago this week, when I went to my very first professional boxing match, May 16th, 1977, Don King Promotions card, headlined by Muhammad Ali, defending his title in a 15-round unanimous decision against Alfredo Evangelista, and also Roberto Duran, Alfredo Escalera, two great Hall of Fame champions, were also on that card. So I just wanted to go back in history a little bit and talk about that. As far as what's going on in this area, of course, nothing's really going on in this area. And as we go into the early part of the summer, doesn't look like anything on the horizon. We're getting, just as a cultural note here in the area, as far as the COVID-19 situation, Washington, D.C. is not going to be open until at least June 8th. So nothing's going to go on boxing-wise in this area, in the D.C. region, of course. In Maryland, Governor Larry Hogan has decided to open some of Maryland, but that some of Maryland does not include Prince George's County or Montgomery County, which is where a lot of the boxing takes place. I guess the western part of the state might be open a little bit, but nothing's going to happen in the primary areas where a lot of boxing takes place. So nothing's going to happen here in this area. Same can be said for Virginia, Northern Virginia. It's not open up until the latter part of May. So not a whole lot going on there. So what that's going to mean primarily is that there's not a lot of things going on. And what's interesting is that the the Golden Gloves, the National Golden Gloves, announced this week that the Golden Gloves will take place sometime in August. I think it's August 9th through the 16th, which doesn't leave a lot of time for boxers in our area, the Beltway area, to really prepare for it. There won't be anything open until at least latter part of May, if not into June. And there won't be any chance. I don't know how they're going to be able to formulate the Golden Gloves and have it in time for this August 9th through the 16th date that they're having in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the National will take place this year. So, again, we're in a holding pattern here in the Beltway. Here in the Beltway, we are in a serious holding pattern with no light as to when that holding pattern will be lifted. So we'll just keep posted here. And until that time, we'll continue to do our historical look backs at some of the great events, and boxers in the Beltway area. That's all we can do at this moment. So we'll keep posted. If anything else happens, of course, you'll hear it first here on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Once again, the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network brought to you by Real-Time Pain Relief. You go to freepainoffer.com. Buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief, you get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief, the official pain relief of the 2020 Daytona 500. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods, all at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Thanks for joining us on this look back through Beltway boxing and my personal history here on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Thank you for joining us. Always remember, keep supporting the best boxing in the world, the boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.